Welcome back for another episode of The Voice of Generation Climate, TVOGC. Today we have with us Alekh Sanghera, who is the co-founder and CEO of FarMart. FarMart is India's biggest B2B SaaS food company, food supply chain company, and their stated vision is to build the good food economy. Alekh, what a pleasure to have you with us on TVOGC today.
And thanks so much, man, for hosting me. Yeah, I've been obviously following what you guys are doing. So, we are partners also. So, hats off to what you guys are doing and getting the word out there on the climate piece. Even the world feels very opposite right now, but we're super excited to be here.
Great. Great. How would you describe the good food economy? Because it can mean very many things to very many people. So what's the crispest version of a definition in your 10th year now? Because you started in 2015. This is your 10th year going on. What does it
Yeah,
mean now?
yeah. So I think for us, we've really conceptualized what it means, success means to like a food economy, and in our viewpoint, in the easiest sense, is that everyone in that value chain, right? Starting with the farmers, even the mid-tier intermediaries or like the processors, distributors. I think what's really important for us that everyone is able to do economically better. Uh, and that means, ensure and understanding that capacity building means actually leveraging each other's, assets as well as, skill sets, rather than trying to have this notion that a replacement is the answer for building a more efficient food value chain. So for us, the good food economy actually encapsulates making these stories more successful by partnering with them rather than replacing them. And in that, the consequence that leads to is once they become much more efficient and they're able to do their work more, in a more organized way. Eventually it's lighter on the planet. It's good for the value chain, good for food wastages, and even good for consumers. So in our viewpoint, good for economy is it's encapsulating that vision of everyone in the value chain, inclusive growth, ensuring that everyone wins, both economically and simultaneously the planet wins because you stay much more light on your feet. And that really means for us is that we are here as a catalytic partner to everyone in the value chain, and that is what means for us to be successful in this space.
And you're connecting the dots that already exist out there, right? Consumers with farmers with the different stakeholders in between. And I've actually went very deep into your model, and what kept standing out is you were driving more efficiency, you're driving more sustainability, and better costs. And I think one of your stated goals is uh, really getting the consumer's wallet share, but 30% of that or more should be reaching the end farmer, right?
Yeah.
Uh, how much is it today, and like how much was it when you first started, and how much is it with your model now? Because it's a very grand goal to have, right? Like that's real farm to table. We've coined that term farm to table, but this is as farm to table as it gets.
Yeah. So initially when we started, I think we were very, very heavily focused on the problems of the farmer, ensuring that they do economically better and obviously their livelihoods are better. But as we kind of started building up the business out, what we realized is that in order to improve the livelihoods of the farmers, actually, what you have to solve for is ensuring that the buyer end, which is either food companies, food processors, or even end consumers, you're able to create value for them, right? Because if you are able to create and capture value for them, is where you can share that value with the farmers at the end, because the flow of money or flow of capital actually happens through them. So when we started, actually, we were very, very focused on the farmer and farmer problems. But I think as we have grown as a company, what we have realized is focusing also on the buyer and buyer wallet share is how you, you know, you capture value from them and then obviously pass down that value to the farmer. I think, and just a layer of that, right? Because you are a new age tech company, you are able to obviously build processes, systems on a software platform that ensures and is able to traceably track everything from the farm to the processor and beyond, right, which is to the consumer. So I think the unintended consequence was that obviously being software first, being technology first, has helped us create a traceability platform. But the way we measure traceability is actually by ensuring that how much of that value was captured by what player in the value chain. And I think we are still, because of the consumer side story or the buyer side story is actually fairly still new in the 10-year journey. I think we are starting to measure that and really get to a point where we can say that up to 30% of that value should be captured at the farm level. So I think it's a journey that has been obviously long enough, and the reason it's been long enough is because unlike other companies in the space, we don't have anyone to look to, right? We don't have a blueprint. We don't have a market go-to strategy we could have adopted, whether domestically or internationally, right? I think we have not only us, but many companies which are in the space have to reimagine everything on from almost like ground zero, right? So I think that's what the harder part of building a business in the food agri space is. And if you marry food agri space with climate, it becomes even more complex as a problem to solve, right? So because we don't have that blueprint, we have to create that blueprint, and we continue to kind of build that blueprint out. Maybe in the future there'll be even more like amazing companies that come out of the space. But I think for us to create that blueprint was getting the fundamentals right, and that's what the thesis has kind of evolved into as we have scaled this business out.
And when did that thesis start building out? Like people call it PPP, right? People, planet, profit, focusing on all three to build really resilient, sustainable businesses. It seems like you've imbibed that into your FarMart model. People are very, very front and center. The farmers
Yeah.
who you serve, businesses who buy from you, the end customer who buys from those businesses, your team, right? People is a really, really big part of your entire company's story. Then there's, of course, the planet, right? You talk about climate resilience and you talk about more resilient food supply chains. Then there's the profit side. Of course, you're a very heavily venture-backed company and your revenues are like, I saw some of the numbers, 4x, 5x in the last couple of years as well, right?
Yeah.
So when did that entire trifecta of PPP start becoming a core part of your DNA? Was it planned from the very beginning or did it evolve along the way? Because there's been a long 10-year history and journey of you building.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, was it from the very beginning or did it come out later in the journey?
So I think what happened, I think, is actually a natural progression. You go from almost like a survival, getting to PMF kind of a stage to getting to revenue PMF. India actually you have to go through two stages of PMF. It's like getting the
Yeah.
product PMF and getting to revenue PMF, right? So I think as
Multiple pivots. No, you had
and
two as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, so I think we started with that initial noble idea that obviously the first people part was I think why we started the company, and that's like our deep reason to like start in this space and create impact in like the 500 600 million people who are directly indirectly in this space. So I think that was like the obviously starting motivator in the initial compass we had, moral compass we had within ourselves. I think it, and slowly as we kind of built out the business, we just took fundamental calls which were actually good for business at the same time good for planet. I think when you are sitting in these meeting rooms and trying to design a business model, right? And if I think you have to be very conscious of understanding the three TP pieces and then designing business models where you can actually, not mitigate or not ignore one thing or the other, right? I think, and that has helped us also unlock a lot of, I would say, the right kind of capital that helps us basically scale the business in the right kind of fundamentals, right? And I think because of those multiple reasons, I think it's been a journey of along the way where we have evolved and really thought through things more deeply, and obviously having help partners like Climes and other institutions who are trying to capture this value, right? It's one thing kind of trying to create this value, but I think what has happened over the last 2 3 years is that the companies like Climes which have helped us capture this value, and once you're able to capture that value, you are then able to share that value with your stakeholders, right? Like whether it's your internal employees, whether it's your existing investors, whether it's like the broad market of buyers right now. Now, the new trend is that we share actually our carbon footprint reports of every shipment with our customers, right? And it's like a good to have, it's a plus plus, but that's one of the reasons why they stick with us, right? So I think I think the ecosystem has to evolve, and I think the ecosystem is evolving. But I think if you have to honestly say, it's been a journey of trying to really understand the kind of business we want to build. And I think the last thing I'll say is obviously I just became a dad a year ago. I think the one that if you're working like whatever 12, 14, 15 hours a day, you don't want to leave a planet which is obviously at a worse situation, at least for your direct contribution in the world, right? So I think it's very personal now also, from not only people who like people like co-founders, but also at the company. Like that's one fact filtering criteria we hire for within the company, right? You have to be caring about these things, and then that becomes a culture eventually. So it's I would say that it's been a journey, like any other company's journey, and I think helping having partners which can able to capture that value helps you just to reinforce that you're doing something good and right, which will eventually also make money out of this. So I think it's a combination of those factors.
That's a really powerful driving force. I mean, multiple forces that you talked about, but especially having a child and then knowing you're going to leave the planet to your child. They should inherit a better world than you came into, right?
Yeah,
And I think that's such a powerful driving force along with all the rest. Your co-founder, your colleagues, your investors, your customers, all demanding and driving better. I think they
yeah,
all add up, right? And this is what we call, that's why we actually call this podcast Gen C, Generation Climate,
uh,
because about 3.5 years ago, we realized there is a very strong need for institutions to be built that are planet first, uh, or climate first, right? And to build institutions like this, it typically takes that leader internally who, for whatever reason, decides to turn his or her institution into a Gen C institution.
yeah,
It's not Gen X, Y, Z. It's just whatever you do good for the planet, right? And then that becomes a particular way of being. It becomes a philosophy of building. So we like to capture these stories and really put them out because it inspires the next person to say, okay, even I can
right,
build that, right? So
yeah.
is there a model or a story that you found that you found really appealing and you said, wow, man, that company did it right, and I've learned so much from them. I want to model on that. Like for me, it's Patagonia.
Yeah.
What about for you?
So honestly, I think obviously you mentioned Patagonia was obviously one founder who has this immense drive of doing good for planet, and just making sure that that everyone who wears that kind of imbibes that, whether it's a customer or the employee, right? I think like in our viewpoint, these are the first layer of companies which were ever built, right? So there's one company called Everlane. Basically, it's in the US. It's become the biggest denim brand in like a short period of 5 years. They are also extremely conscious of the planet. They have a different way to, grow, like basically build their jeans. At the same time, they actually show a profit margin at every level. So whether if your jean is being built at Bangladesh, like how much did the hosiery make, how many employees do they have, and so on and so forth. So Everlane was kind of one inspiration of how we should build also in food value chains, and one of the industries which are actually the most heavily polluted industries in the world, right? Which is denim, right? So I think Evelyn was kind of a realization for me that these companies are really getting like exciting, and it's something which you can like wear proudly on in a market which is so crowded and like so just having so many competitors, right? I think so. Everlane, Patagonia obviously was the obvious answer for me, but I think just overall, I feel uh, I mean India hasn't really seen a lot of these companies, but I think that at a global level, every company you would see is like just either termed as sustainable or like trying to be sustainable. I think the one obvious answer I think is actually that no one talks about is actually Adidas. So I saw their annual report a year ago, and actually, if you look at every shoe that is made, almost over 78% of their manufacturing now of shoes is actually of plastic waste, plastic waste, which are basically these fly nets which you get nowadays. So I think Adidas obviously does not showcase it that much, but I think that's a one really cool company which has obviously legacy company that has really imbibed the new culture, and has actually seen a revival because of that. I think so. I think these are two companies which I found very interesting, and most of this actually has started in the fashion space, and I think it's going to go down to other industries like food and so on. So like EV, I think is now
Yeah,
going to become really big.
logistics and mobility. In fact, we are seeing a lot.
Mobility,
Fashion, I think,
yeah.
was first, but logistics
Yeah.
and mobility is definitely a lot more interest than ever before now. They're
Yeah,
leading
I
the
think
charge.
it's also a cost factor. I mean, EV is financially it makes more sense. So the
Yeah.
adoption is obviously making. will go down faster. But I think it's a lot to do with we live in electronics, waste management, EVs, iron batteries. All these things are like these are very like stupid, boring businesses to look at from the far. But I think if you look at it more deeply, that these are like the next big companies which will be actually built in the recycling, waste collection, stuff which no one really talks about, or no founder wakes up in the morning and be like, I want to start a, like an electronic waste manufacturing company. So I think these are just things which like anyone who's listening to the podcast should think more deeply about, because the amount of waste we will generate the next I would say like 2 decades is and just it will be just immense, right? And no one's looking at these things because of they're not sexy, but the amount of value you can create is just like, yeah, I can't even measure in terms of the $1 trillion economy that will be built on this itself. Because these businesses now will fundamentally have to procure based on these requirements. So it's going to be a tectonic shift over the next 2 decades, I would say.
Yeah, you're right. And so far, you use the word also. You said it's mostly been a good to have, right? Like
Yeah.
these minor decisions of showing carbon emissions on your product, on showing, doing route optimization, just more sustainable practices in your entire value chain. They've been a good to have, largely, not a must have. And I think like that takes a certain level of forward thinking to say, okay, it's a good to have. I'm going to do it today. It'll eventually start showing me results, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why not as many institutions that we wanted have gotten started with the climate program yet. There's a tectonic shift coming. More and more institutions will get on board with climate programs overall. But it's still a small piece of the puzzle today, right? So I think to get to that decision making system, there's lots of again minor influences all through your life, right? And I want to just cover a few which have driven you as a founder to just become impact driven. So we were talking about this earlier, but you went to boarding school where you grew up. What role did that play in turning you into the founder you are today? You went to Lawrence, and what was the influence of that?
Yeah, so I think like being going to a boarding school, I think it's hard to explain to anyone who has not been to a boarding school, right? Like so I'll try to do my best, but I think it's that one place where at least in your childhood you feel super safe. I feel it's an environment which is very very driven by cu- core human values, like basically of I would say mutual respect, deep friendship, a deep level of desire, a deep level of confidence that instills with you. Maybe even like a little bit elitist, because you obviously have a select group of people from the community. It's not actually very diverse in the way and backgrounds, right? So I think it gives you that how those Americans have those that confidence to build. It's weird when
Yeah,
I correlated it, because like America thinks they are the best, obviously, and that's why like people who come out of America from the education system feel like they rule the world, right? And that kind of confidence helps you almost like shadow all the almost makes you so naive that that you believe that you can build something in a very very in any space possible, right? So I think what it did to me personally are at a couple of levels, right? One is I just have a deep level of understanding of people and friendships. I feel whatever we've done, even the co-founder I have right now at FarMart, is we've been there together for like 30 23 years in terms of like knowing each
wow.
other, right? So I think I just understand that by the end of it, building a startup or a company or anything in life needs deep amount of relationships and like deep amount of commitment to relationships, right? I think that was one fundamental learning I had very early on. The second is I think I was so heavy into sports that I faced rejections at many levels. And I feel like those small rejections help you become just a very resilient person, because you want to excel at something, and obviously you have to obviously you can't win every time, but you have to build a team and do a lot of those things. So I think sport in very early life in a very competitive environment pushes you to what like building a company looks like in very early life. It has a lot of actually mirror kind of instances. And I think third thing which I'll say is just this deep level of security that my company or what I do, the failure doesn't really define me. I think my parents had a very strong role to play in that. My friends have a very strong role to play in that. My now wife has a very strong role to play in that, right? So I think it just gives you this deep level of confidence that you are not your company, but actually you're trying to push a idea or an agenda forward. And if it works, that's amazing, and your life will be like great. But if it doesn't, that's also okay. I think that comes in somewhere later on. But I think if you can, and these are three things which school has really taught me, right? You have to sometimes just, and the third thing is the hardest to do actually, if you ask me. But if you have that social circle around you, which has obviously supported you, doesn't define you by your name or work. You just are so secure with your friends and your family that you just don't need outside gratification for people trying to tell you that this is like you're doing something cool. Like you're just doing it because you want to do it and it's fun for you. And if you don't want to do it, you might not do it, right? So I think just once you put those three things together, in my life at least, I have realized that it's just a concoction of like a massive level of resilience in building a company. And people actually forget this, but beyond a certain point, being an entrepreneur is actually more about staying calm in extreme ambiguity and being resilient in extreme ambiguity, right? So I think those are things which will make you so secure in life that building a company actually becomes much more like almost like a process. It's just a beautiful journey, and I hope this continues obviously for a long period of time. But it's just something that has helped me filter what's important and what's not.
Multiple aspects of the going yours. I think what really stood out is healthy competition, right? Resilience, grit, getting used to no's and rejection, which humbles you. I think even
Yeah,
now, every day I wake up expecting at least three no's a day. It could come from anywhere.
yeah.
Like it could come from the capital market, it could come from new potential customer or existing colleague, right? Someone or the other is going to say no, so I wake up expecting three, but unaffected compared to how much it used to be earlier. How many
Yeah, I'm
no's is
sure
it?
I'm sure you have this, right? Like it's like if your day is going good, you know this, you can get this phone call will make it shitty, right? So I
Yeah.
think everyone's problem is your problem, and you are at the bottom of like the stuff you have to deal with, right? So I think no one calls you in a happy moment. Everyone's calling you when things don't go
Yeah.
right. So I think just like you have to get okay with that, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, I would say. And I'm actually one of the most impatient person you'll ever meet, but I think age and time spent like helps you kind of build something around that.
Yeah, 10 years in the game would have made you very wise and just
And
calm.
it's not wise. I don't. I think it's just not wise. It's just that you go through so much that you just get okay with situations. I feel.
Yeah, so the next one, again, it goes back to the people issue, people subject, which is how do you find great people, right? From the very beginning, obviously, that's been a really important part of the FarMart story. And just to build any iconic company, you need phenomenal people. So, what is your method to the madness? What's your approach been? And who are the best kind of people that you have found to work with?
Yeah, I think it's a great question to be honest. There's no question that you just need immense level of talent to build any company in this world. Like I would put it up there like more than capital, like by far.
Yeah,
And the mistake which people actually make, in my view, is that you tend to look very outward for solutions that someone you'll hire will come and solve PMF for you. Someone you hire will come and solve customer service for you. Someone you hire will kind of generate sales for you. I think what you have to really focus on is just three things in hiring anyone, right? I think what has worked for us, and I've made major mistakes in these in the past, right? So I think what you have to look for actually is three things in anyone, like whether this person has 25 years experience or like maybe just a fresher, right? I think one is there has to be immense amount of drive of why they want to do anything in life, right? And that it comes across very simple. Like you'll be in that room with that person and you'll feel this intensity that this person is so driven that they will go through a wall. It doesn't matter what they are working on, right? So I think one is that. I think second is this insane level of curiosity to just couple up and learn in any situation without panicking, right? I think the know-how, like people who come from that, I know it all, or like people who be like, इस industry में ऐसा ही होता है, will never be able to build a company for you, even they have the best resume in the world, right? So you have to have this insane level of like, I'm okay not knowing this and like kind of learning through this. And the third thing which I'll actually put even above them is actually integrity, right? I think you have to have a strong level of integrity, whether it's around your professional ethics, or it is the work ethic you provide into a company, or even just actual financial ethics, basically, which India has a very low bar for. So I think these are the three things which you can find in a person just out of college, and you can find in a person which is 25 years. And the way I think about this is oftentimes India has not built those many companies to find professional talent that easily. So I think what you have to really, really think through is that if this person has these three things, can I, over a period of time, build this person out to become something great, right? And I think at one thing we do at FarMart is, which if you look at every senior, every major like vertical head we've had, or we've kind of worked with, except a few, right, which obviously we have to sometimes hire laterally, but is actually we've like worked with them for 2 3 years trying to get them into the right shape and stage, because you're trying to build a company with a very different mindset and a different kind of like a challenger mindset to the industry, right? If you hire from the industry, a company actually becomes just like the industry, right? So I think founders often underestimate how much they'll have to invest in people, and overestimate hiring is their solution. So I think what worked really well for us with people front is really, really hiring really the smart people with immense amount of drive, high integrity, and just insane curiosity, right? And once you do that, and because we are also very hands-on founders, you actually realize that these people's ambition keeps on growing as they go into these roles, right? And I think that is fundamentally what I feel is the big difference of success, between, I would say, like a early stage to a growth stage company. So just like I feel like you have to just like finding time to invest in like fundraising or like product market fit, or like I think you have to invest that amount of time in your teams, and then obviously have the right people. And then if you don't find someone right, just also let go of them very fast, like in a very honest conversation, because you're not wasting their time, they're not wasting your time, right? So I think it's just something which you learn along the way. It doesn't come, even though you can read 1,000 books on this, it just doesn't come very naturally, but because you're trying to still figure out your definition of the company, right? So I think for us, like we have this management trainee program, which we hire anywhere between 5 to like 15 freshers every year. We actually make them work in different roles every 3 months for till the year, until the time we figure out what the best skill set is, and then put them there. And then automatically you build like a conveyor belt of a sort in the organization. But just having said that, you have to think like you're building for 10 15 years, right? The problem is like I feel like founders are not thinking that they have to build for 10 15 years. That's why taking like short-term decisions helps. Like initial team is hard to build, but once you get that in place, you have to think like, okay, I'm going to build this for next 15 years. And I have to train talent for 15 years. So it's just a process which it takes time, it takes a lot of energy, but it's the right way to build a business rather than like a little bit shortcuts and trying to laterally hire and trying to solve a lot of those problems, because each of that hire takes like 6 months to integrate, 6 months to kind of execute, and it takes a year is a long time for a startup to deliver on their promises, right? So those are just things which I kind of learned along with building a company is actually building the people and how that should be designed within the organization.
Yeah, I think longevity is a core value uh, in short supply, but especially in India, it's necessary. This whole idea of building a company in 2 3 years, flipping it, and then getting out doing the next thing. I don't know if it works.
Yeah, it almost never works, to be honest. It's yeah, I haven't seen, and there might be some people get lucky or something, but if you look at like the real P&L, right, like what the business is, it's actually nothing. So you
Yeah.
have to understand that these are not businesses built on these are like features. Like I call them feature businesses. These are not like product businesses, right? Or they are not like the core business, because building a core product business, or like when I say product, is that you have so many facets of building that. Yes, a feature can be acquired, but like a product is very hard to acquire or take public, right? So I think that is where we have mistakenly like tagged success in the last, I would say, 5 7 years, if I can say that.
Specifically on customers, because you serve Africa, Middle East, Asia, you have a really large customer network and enterprises who source from you. Uh, have they played a role in like how you've built your business and how you've become a planet positive, climate first business as well? Have they been asking for better more climate resilient supply chains, for example? Like, have they driven any part of this decision making, or purely again from you going to them?
So I think the way or the way the team has thought through this, right? I think any trend in the world, right, actually happens through the consumer. And
Yeah,
if you look at what's happened in the last 50 years, right, all these consumer trends actually start in the West because they are a net surplus economy, and
yeah,
they have the luxury of doing this, and then almost overnight they transcend into domestic uh, behavior, right? And I think what has happened over the last, I would say, 5 years is that uh, that trend has started to shift drastically because consumers are getting super conscious about everything they are consuming, right? Which also means consumption levels may be dropping down over a period of time. So in a market where consumption might be dropping down in terms of net goods bought per person, uh, the winners of the companies which are be winners actually are thinking about how the consumer is making decisions, right? And then what's happened over the last, I would say, 2 years, predominantly is that these larger companies or like the B2B companies in our space, especially in the food and ag, have started to think and put mechanism in place to give preference to people who are able to give this information out, because eventually what will happen is with the regulation and the government catching up, right, become almost like mandatory for declaring food loss, for doing traceability, for doing like climate impact, planet impact, right? So those metrics will be almost like demanded as a must have than like just a good to have, right? So when that shift happens, right, we just thought we'll be well positioned because we've done a lot of that work very early on, and because we have the right technology architecture and system in place to provide that information and data at a macro level, right? So I think the positioning for us is right. I think the consumers are going to drive this behavior, which has already started to happen, and businesses now have started to realize that this is the only way they can stay competitive in a very very complex market, right? So it's actually not a matter of when it's actually happened. It's just that the market will take time to adopt it across products, right? So in the food, it's now obviously very apparent. But I think with lifestyle businesses, supplements, even beauty products, I think those things have started to really pick up in the value chain. And I think like I said, businesses are already thinking way ahead, and they actually executives, and I'm sure you know this, you speak to more executives than me on this, but they have like really hardcore metrics by their board, uh, in terms of even carbon emissions and other carbon credit generation programs which they are trying to run, right? So I think that it's almost a switch which can never be turned off now from here on. You might be rewarded differently in different eras of administration, but I think that is just going to stay. And if you don't adapt to that, you will not have a business probably 2 3 years from here. Anyone won't. So I think for a new company to try to build a market presence, it's like a plus plus you have to give now. It's not optionality for you anymore.
I actually agree with that. Vast shifts will happen in this direction, in the planet positive direction, because of consumers demanding better. And like consumer behavior change is really what
Yeah,
ripples across the entire stack into businesses, whether they like it or not. You all have to adapt, right? Sustainability has
yeah, yeah.
become part of your DNA now. And it's not a question of if, but when. It's just
Correct.
when a little bit time delayed. So it's definitely happening. And it's cool to hear your perspective on that too, driven by the end customer actually eating food, demanding
Yeah.
better. Um, so you have, after two pivots in 10 years and now and arriving at the B2B SaaS model and really thriving with it, uh, you're a product-led company, software first. Mark Andreessen had in the 2000 said software is eating the world. You went above and beyond that and you said AI is now eating the world that was already being eaten by software.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? So where did that come from and how is that playing a role in how you're building FarMart now going forward?
Obviously there's a lot of hype and like noise around AI, and completely understand that. So my wife actually is a AI scientist. She's been doing this for now, I would say, greater part of like 12 years, before AI was even a fancy word in this market. And obviously we have these home conversations over dinner table, like a lot, right? I and what's crazy is just the exponential scale at which the technology is developing. it's mind blowing. I have never seen anything
Yeah.
technonically that crazy in my lifetime at least, right? And I've been in the tech sector for not more than 10 years, right? So, and 10, 12 years, whatever. So I just feel like this is one technology which will blow everything out of the window, right? And the reason I say this is because any functional task of even now, I would say go to a level of thinking that any person does within the company, outside the company, is actually going to easily be not, I would not say, I would not go to the extent of replace, but actually be more efficiently done by a AI agent, right? Or like a AI platform. And my thesis is like in the world where most of these tasks will be done by I think just algorithms at a insane level of efficiency and scale. And with institutional knowledge, I will add that what does the world look like 10 years or 15, 20, 30, 20 years from here, right? Which is actually, and if you see the rate of compounding of these models or what they're doing every month, it's just, if you just take that graph and like exponentially, not even exponentially, just like linearly grow it, it's just a level of intelligence and execution and capabilities that we have not seen in our world, right? So what I'm trying to think about this in this whole era is that companies initially, if you look at, if you remember, like 2 3 years ago, 5 years ago, almost every founder took a pride saying that I have raised X amount and I have like 5,000 employees and like 10,000 employees and like 15,000 employees. Like, that was like the gloat, or that was like the pump, right? A founder would have. I think what will happen now is that the gloat is going to be like, I have 10 employees and I have 500 million revenue. Like I have 50 employees and I have, let's say, 5 million revenue, right? I think that is what is going to stay the gloat. Now you can just imagine, like layer that with like really, really smart people building in this space with technology compounding over a period of time, and just see the outcomes that will be delivered, right? So according to me, like the tectonic shift is actually going to become that many more people from the workforce are actually going to become individual contractors or individual contributors. And that's why we believe that the way we think about this is that our thesis has always been about enablement of the existing ecosystem, right? So if we are trying to enable the existing ecosystem of the food and agri value chains, like having lesser people and building better scale and better efficiency across markets is going to become a lot more easier for us than thinking about having a 5,000 workforce, which I was thinking 3 years ago, right? So I think that conversation has shifted. The moment that conversation has shifted, you as a founder don't have to manage 5,000 people. You have to manage like 200 people, and you can get to like a much larger scale, not in terms of business revenue, but just like touching lives and creating impact, right? So I think these are just things which in my head are super exciting because you can deliver a lot more of value to a lot more of people across a lot more boundaries and like borders, and using this technology. And that is what is so exciting in building in this era, and just doing stuff, right? So the compounding effect of AI, the way companies are going to be built in terms of manpower, staffing, multiply like the scale they can create is going to be outright. And now, where do you want to spend your time? You want to spend time in learning the technology. You want to spend time to how does your skill set get supplemented by these technologies? How where do you want to spend your time? What will the world look like 10 years from here, right? So 10, 15, 20 years from here. So I think those are things which we all should be thinking more deeply about. And eventually will lead to outcomes which are very different than what outcomes are delivered like in the last 5, 10, 20 years. Yeah, correct.
About building
Absolutely.
experts teams. How small can your team be of the best operators that you
Yeah.
actually enjoy showing up to work with,
Yeah.
and you can just fully trust to get the job done, right?
Yeah.
That's become a flex now. I think 10
Yeah,
people,
correct.
10 people teams, 15 people teams are like the future, right? Um, I'm really excited for that present and future going forward. Like we're 7 people now, and our dream is to keep it at 10
Yeah,
for as
well, that'll
but
be like next level, right?
that'd be
Basically.
insane, right?
Yeah,
Like
and
I
it
was
makes
like,
a lot of sense, man. You can become profitable much faster. You can do a lot more things, like things. So like the problem is you bleed at that level, and then everything else gets very complex to build after that.
yeah. So what a time to be alive. Like truly, what a
Yeah.
time to be alive.
Yeah,
Uh,
what time to be alive, what time to be building, as in
yeah.
what a time to be part of something that is being built. These are just like very exciting times for
Yeah.
everyone.
So I just on this subject itself, how are you becoming AI native as within FarMart? People wise is
Yeah.
one thing, but within your own operations, because you're already quite efficient. You're driving resilience, driving sustainability, you're very efficient and route planning and stuff.
Yeah.
But where are you becoming AI
So,
native?
so honestly, if you just look at the macro numbers, right, we roughly are doing basically, if you look at the whole Indian market, right, basically that's like 300 to 350 billion in food agri value chain a year, right? We do 300, 350 million right now, right? So like we're like 1% of the entire agri GDP in that way, right? So the way to think about this is like, this business, can it go from an extra add more value from, let's say, like 300 billion GDP, can you get to like 30, 50, 60, 70 billion in value creation? And if we get to that 70, 50, 70 billion of value creation, that means like multiplied by number of farmers impacted, number of processors we work with, number of food businesses we service, right? And the way we think about AI efficiency there is, it's actually, AI will not make us more efficient in our value chain. AI will help us get to scale. So we are just thinking purely of, can you get to like 30 billion? Can you get to 50 billion? Can you get to 100 billion, right? And that is the only answer in a short period of time you can get to, is using these AI agents or AI technology to get to that scale, right? Which has deep institutional knowledge, or can drive scale, can drive efficiency, can drive resilience, right? So for us, the question is not at all about optimizing. Actually, it's about how does each team member we add in the team multiplied by AI powered solution that the person can deliver a result of 50x 100x more, right? So that's the number of conversations we are having within the company, rather than having that I have to make the team more efficient. That's not the
Yeah.
answer. The answer is like, can yeah,
Each new
basically,
person
yeah.
is like jet fuel compounding
Yeah,
the
yeah.
trajectory you're on, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I just recently read this memo by, obviously, the Shopify founder, right?
Yeah.
It just came out and it obviously is going viral. But we literally, like a month ago, we had this conversation that every hiring position that goes out will actually have to kind of justify that, is the person going to be AI trained? Is the person actually better than the AI to do this? And at the same time, can this person with AI, whoever you hire will actually result into a better outcome for whatever role they're hiring, right? So if a person who's hiring, right, reads these things in their memos, right, is actually a person is looking for these things, right? So like I said, it's just a mindset shift. You takes a few quarters to do, but if you do that, right, then is what you will truly be like a AI enterprise in today's world. Which is so dynamic. I don't know what's going to happen in 6 months, so you can imagine what's going to happen in a couple of years down here from here.
We've onboarded 90,000 retailers so far, 2 million farmers across 600 districts. It's a huge, huge impact. I remember when we did our first project with you 3 years ago in Jan 2022. At that time itself, we had, figured out that you're doing about 19% carbon emission savings with your existing supply chain compared to every other competitor out there. That was 3 years ago. That just shows like the power of, one decision, which is measuring emissions, and then you can actually drive such vast amount of carbon savings. Really, I'm like super impressed by your work. I think what you're building is truly like here and now necessary. It's good for farmers, it's good for customers, it's good for retailers, it's good for the planet. And yeah, we're rooting for you and wish you all the best with FarmArt. Alekh, this has been a great conversation and appreciate your time for this.
Yeah, no, first of all, thanks for having me. And what you do is obviously very helpful to both get the word out to the world that this can be possible, and like companies are doing it. And obviously, you as a personal founder that taking the mission in Climes to make sure that we companies are not able to like just measure it, but stay at the forefront of this innovation. And a lot of the institutional knowledge you guys gain from that, transit into the startup ecosystem. So yeah, super, super pumped to always partner with you guys. I know this is a long journey, but I'm sure that it's going to create value for, most importantly, the planet and everyone of us. So thanks for to what you do every day of your life.
Sure, this will inspire someone starting a company or already building a company to perhaps learn something from this to become a Gen Z institution themselves. Because if every institution becomes a generation climate institution, whether you're Gen X, Y, Z, Alpha, Boomer, beta, whatever generation.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I
matter.
forget which one is going on. So yeah.
Yeah, like, but every generation can choose to be climate first, and we really
Yeah.
need that because we have less than a decade to reverse climate change,
Correct.
right? If we want to leave a better planet for our children.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, thank you for what you do, and we'll put the word out about FarMart.
Thanks, man. Thanks for doing this.